Good day, class. Welcome to our modular distance learning in TLE10, which covers horticulture production. We are now in Lesson 3, Types of Planting Materials Propagule. These are the following objectives. Letter A, identify the methods of plant propagation. Letter B, enumerate the vegetative propagule. And letter C, give the advantages of seeds and asexual propagation. Now, let me show you these two pictures. Try to analyze what is picture A and what is picture B. These two pictures concerns with plant propagation. Okay, now let us see if you got the right answer. Okay, so letter A, it illustrates seed propagation, and letter B picture illustrate asexual propagation. Now, let's move on to the methods of plant propagation. Letter A, propagation by seed. It is a method of plant propagation by multiplying, reproducing, or breeding new plants that is done through the use of seeds. As you can see in the illustration, this is an example of seed propagation. Now, let's move on to the seed quality or viability. Seeds can be categorized into two types based on their initial moisture content during extraction. Number 1, recalcitrant seeds. The moisture content is initially high and the loss by drying below the critical level, which is 20% to 0, will lead to rapid loss of viability. This is an example of recalcitrant seeds. This is a mango seed. Some are lanzones, santol, and jackfruit. Number 2 is the orthodox seeds. These seeds can be dried to prevent respiratory processes and placed in airtight containers to exclude oxygen. Corn is the example of orthodox seeds. Some are peas and tomatoes. The difference between recalcitrant and orthodox seeds is that recalcitrant seeds tolerate some water loss, but not the extreme level survived by the orthodox seeds. Now let's move on to the germination test. One way of assessing the viability of seeds is by performing germination tests. As you can see in the illustration, this is an example of germination test. To stimulate seed germination, the following steps can be done. Letter A, scarification. This procedure can be done chemically by dipping in sulfuric or hydrochloric acids for less than a minute. This is an example or illustration of scarification. Letter B is removal of the mucilaginous substance by soaking the seeds overnight. This is the illustration of mucilaginous seeds. That's all about the seed propagation. Now, let's move on to the asexual propagation. Vegetative or asexual propagation. It involves taking a part of one parent plant and causing it to regenerate itself into a new plant. This is the illustration of asexual propagation. From the main plant itself, develop a new plant from the buds. Now let's move on to the kinds of vegetative propagule. Number 1, runners. These are specialized growing stem parts that arise from leaf axils of the plant and form roots of their own that render them excellent propagating materials like strawberry and black pepper. As you can see in the picture, this is an example of runners. The growing stem create new plant and form their own roots. Number 2 is leaves. Leafy shoots that arise from axillary buds produced at the base of the plant. This is an illustration of leaves. They multiply from leaves. An example of this is the pineapple fruit. Next, number 3 is suckers. Adventitious roots that arise from underground stems below the ground. This is an illustration of a sucker plant. Example of this is the citrus fruits, which is banana and apple. They remove sucker and extract more of them. Number 4, corms. Underground solid stem structures that contain nodes and internodes. The corm can be further divided into several seed pieces. Example is taro. As you can see in the illustration, this is an example of corms. The stem structures grow underground. Number 5 is root cuttings. These are used in propagating breadfruit. This is an illustration of root cutting. From the basic root cutting, planted root produce new shoot. Number 6 is leaf bud cuttings. These are derived from axillary buds in stem and leaf. The stem-bearing buds are cut into pieces and inserted in a rooting medium. This is the illustration of leaf cutting. You have to cut a portion of leaves and soak in the water and wait for their own roots before planting. Next, last number is 7, stem cuttings. This plant stem including a tip, example, shoot, twig, sucker, or a portion of a stem without the apex that includes one or more. This is the illustration of stem cutting. From the basic stem, cut the stem and plant it with node point in the soil. So go back. We have 7 kinds of vegetative propagule. These are the runners, slips, suckers, corms, root cutting, leaf bud cuttings, and the stem cuttings. Now, let us differentiate the 2 methods of propagation by looking into their own good points. First, advantages of using seeds propagation. This is most practical and cheapest way. Next, it is the stronger anchorage for fruit trees grown from seed, which makes the trees resistant to strong winds. Next, the advantages of vegetative propagation. First, they produce true to type. Second, suitable for plant species that do not normally produce seeds. And last, highly useful for species with distinct maleness and femaleness. Example of this is the rambutan. Now, points to ponder. Learning plant propagation is a great skill to have because you can make lots of new plants for your garden rather than having to purchase them from a nursery. It can save a lot of money, and plant propagation also gives you great satisfaction in knowing you played a part in creating those plants, which is probably one of the most rewarding aspects of gardening. Okay class, now try to watch these two videos by clicking this link for your additional knowledge on the procedure of seeds and the sexual propagation. Okay, now, on a one-whole sheet of paper, I want you to answer the learning task number 1. Examine the following pictures. Identify the type of vegetative propagate. Okay, so this is number 1, picture number 2, and number 3. Next, number 4, picture, and last, number 5, picture. Now, let's move on to the learning task number 2. Find the word that describes the types of planting materials. Okay, so this is a word search puzzle. You will find at least 10 words that describes the type of planting materials. Write your answers on a sheet of paper. Okay, class. For your engagement activity, choose any kind of seeds you want to germinate. Record the viability of its germination for at least 1 month. Copy this table in your notebook. First column, type of seed. And the next column, the number of seeds germinated for week 1, week 2, week 3, and week 4. Class, I want you to write a reflection in your notebook after taking this lesson. Write at least 2 to 3 sentences. I learned that blank, and I realized that blank. Okay, that's the end of our lesson 3. Compile your answer sheets in your portfolio and be ready on the date of submission. Thank you and good luck.